Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm announcing proposed changes to the Education Act via Bill 6, the Prioritizing Literacy and Numeracy Act. These changes to the Education Act will help schools find and support students who need extra help. Our classrooms have many different students and learning types, and finding problems early means that we can help students sooner. Strong reading and math skills are very important for every single student. If we don't help students early, they can fall behind. That's why we want to make math and reading screeners a key part of how we move forward to help students in complex classrooms. Math and reading screeners are quick and easy checks that help teachers see how each student is doing. When teachers use these screeners, they can spot students who need extra help right away. Classrooms today have many different students, as I've mentioned. Some learn fast, some need more time, and some have other challenges. If a student is struggling with reading or math, the screener will show it and identify it early. Teachers can then give targeted support before the problem becomes bigger. This means small issues don't turn into big ones, and students can get the help when they need it most in those early formative years. If this bill is passed, schools will need to implement a few new measures. Firstly, they will need to ensure that they give reading and math screeners to all students in kindergarten to grade 3. They will also be required to share the results of these screeners with parents, and they will also be required to send the results to the Government of Alberta. These rules will apply to all school divisions and all types of schools, and they will start in the 2026-27 school year, so schools have time to get ready for these changes. Making these rules into law means every school will do things the same way. It helps us act quickly and keeps families involved and informed. Parents, as I mentioned, will get the results of these screeners. This means families will always know how their child is doing in reading and math. If a child needs help, parents can work with teachers to support intervention plans at home. We will also use these screener results to see how students are doing across Alberta. This helps us understand what support is needed in particular schools and will help ensure that we make the right decisions to lift up all students. In closing, these changes show our commitment to helping students build strong reading and math skills. By using math and reading screeners, we give every child the best chance to succeed and help teachers manage increasing classroom complexity. It's now my privilege to invite Mike McMahon, President of the College of Alberta Superintendents, to share a few remarks.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the College of Alberta School Superintendents, it's a privilege to speak about something that's very at the heart of it, public education, literacy and numeracy. These two foundational skills are the cornerstones of every student's learning journey. They're not just subjects, they're the gateways to understanding, problem solving, and lifelong success. Strong literacy and numeracy skills empower students to think critically, to engage fully in their communities, and to adapt to an ever-changing world. That is why measuring literacy and numeracy matters. Reliable data allows us to understand where our students are excelling and where they need additional support. It informs sound decisions at every level, from classroom instruction to provincial policy, ensuring that our collective efforts are both responsive and effective. As system educational leaders, we recognize that improvement depends on insight. Measurement gives us the insight. It allows us to celebrate progress, identify gaps, and direct resources where they have the most impact. The College of Alberta School Superintendents is committed to supporting a culture of evidence-based leadership where data drives innovation and every child has the opportunity to achieve the fullest potential. Equally important, allowing districts the flexibility to choose assessments from an approved list that aligns with local context has strengthened the accuracy and relevancy of the data we collect. Together, through collaboration and professional excellence and a shared vision for student success, we ensure that Alberta remains a leader in literacy and numeracy achievements across Canada and the world. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to the press secretary.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So as always, one question, one follow-up. Please put up your hand. I'll give you direction to go ahead, and please make sure you say who your question is directed towards. So I'll go with French first here.
We're on a last name basis, okay. It's Janet French from CBC. So I'm just looking at the actual bill, section 30.5 and 30.6 say the minister is entitled to individual personal information, student results. Why do you need this information about individual students?
Well, the idea behind the individual information is to help ensure that we're delivering targeted support. That's a key element, of course, behind this entire bill is so that we can identify students who require additional intervention and ensure that adequate supports are being provided.
Okay, I interviewed a woman at the University of Lethbridge, professor who worked with the ATA to gather feedback from teachers about these screening assessments. And earlier this year, she published a study that found quite a few concerns among teachers about the way that these assessments run, including that they weren't given enough work hours to prepare for, administer, score, or submit the test results by the government's timeline, that they didn't receive any training on how to interpret the results, that they felt overwhelmed adding it to their roster of standardized testing, that they described them as unfair to English language learners, that math students had been tested on concepts that they weren't educated in yet, and that it upset children. Like, children realized when they were flunking these tests because the teacher ended them early. So how do you explain why this is mandatory when there seem to be some concerns about the way that it's being deployed?
Sure, we're listening carefully to concerns. We are engaging in some follow-up consultation to see how the implementation and rollout of the screeners has been operating in our schools, and we'll be collecting some additional feedback to see where we can make changes and improvements. The screeners can predict with 95% accuracy whether a student will experience learning difficulties in the future, and that's incredibly valuable information for our educators and school divisions to have on hand.
Go ahead.
Hi, Jasmine King, Global Edmonton. The release mentions that this also has to do with students with language barriers. How can these screenings address those challenges, and are those even in the same realm?
Yeah, it can help, of course, and one of the other pieces, though, that's important to note that I know Janet commented on a moment ago, is school divisions and principals have the opportunity to exempt students from these assessments. So if a student has challenges with English, if that may not be their primary language, that student can be exempted from the screeners, which of course are designed to measure their overall strength with respect to literacy.
And I guess just for my follow-up, just your reaction to the amount of recall petitions that we're seeing pop up for not only yourself but other ministers.
Yeah, I've provided a statement on my Facebook page regarding the current active recall. And, it is an important instrument of democracy, and elected officials have to always be held accountable to their voters. And I think as well it should be used for the right purposes.
Going anywhere in the back there?
Yeah, you recently sent out a pamphlet to your constituents highlighting your achievements. How concerned are you about the recall petition against you?
I'm always accountable to my constituents, and so I always want to make sure that I'm meeting their standards and their expectations, and look forward to them being able to participate in the democratic process. And from the last election, of course, I received just shy of 50% of the vote of my constituents, and I'm moving forward with confidence to be able to represent their views here in the legislature.
Anyone else in the room? Go ahead.
Yeah, Minister Eyes Glamour, True North. In the Calgary Board of Education's 2026-27 budget priorities, they're calling for $148 million in additional funding, citing 4 different streams, and they also cited a 9-fold increase in children with specialized learning needs. So I'm curious, since the federal government controls immigration, should they provide some or all of that funding to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. That there has been a significant increase in the number of new Canadians, of course, arriving, and we've seen a 34% increase in the number of refugee students and a significant increase in the number of students with English as an additional language. I want to look at that in a little bit more depth. I'm also not too keen on the federal government having a little bit more involvement in areas that are exclusive provincial authority, but they should also have responsibility for the consequences and implications of their decisions and actions.
And then, yeah, if the citizen initiative petition succeeds in stripping funding from accredited independent schools, I'm just curious, how would the province handle the return of tens of thousands of students, many of whom have those specialized learning needs, to the public system?
That would be something that we'd have to model, and I think it would be extremely challenging. We have about 50,000 students with our independent operators. A significant number of our independent operators operate specifically for students with specialized learning needs, and so that will present an extremely that'll be extremely challenging from a logistical perspective to try and implement and execute. But of course, as the petition moves on, we will be modeling that just to ensure that we are prepared for whatever kind of outcome.
All right, we're going to go to the phones. Operator, first caller, please.
We have a question from Lona Marchette from Radio Canada. Your line is open.
Hi. So it says that budget 2025 includes $11 million to support math and reading instruction. Is that part of the classroom complexity budget?
That is a separate budget line item specifically related to these screeners. Of course, conducting the screening is an important part, but the intervention that follows is even more important. Obviously, if we just identify students who have who require additional support with reading and math and are not able to provide them with additional support, then we're not meeting the full expectations. So we did allocate $11 million in budget 2025 specifically to support and help school divisions hire staff to conduct these interventions. Those dollars will be increasing in subsequent budgets as we've targeted. But that's separate. We also have the Classroom Complexity Grant, which is a separate grant with additional outcomes and objectives.
Follow up on the line?
Yeah, so this money is going to be allocated to hiring more people, right? Because one of the main critique was the lack of hands-on resources.
Yeah, absolutely. The $11 million in budget 25 to support literacy and numeracy can be used by school divisions to hire more educational assistants or increase the number of hours that they're able to work, specifically to support the interventions that are associated with these literacy and numeracy screeners.
All right, we're going to go back in the room. Anyone else with some questions? Going once, French, or Janet, French?
It's the first time I've ever heard him refer to as French. But,
I don't know.
It's Monday.
So why does this need to be in law? I mean, what we heard this morning was that, for example, diplomas, PATs, those are policy,
Correct.
not law. Why does this need to be codified?
I think for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, to help ensure standardization across the province. And secondly, and most importantly, to help ensure that this is a matter of significant priority. And I think we can all agree that getting the foundations right in those early formative years should be one of the most significant objectives of our entire education system. So I think that's why it's critical and essential that it be established in law so that we retain our focus and all successive future governments retain that focus on ensuring success in literacy and numeracy.
And $11 million, that's already in this year's budget across the province, how adequate do you feel that is to get all the children who are identified as having deficits, to get them the appropriate amount of help that they require to catch up?
Yeah, I'm happy to, of course, continue to talk to school divisions. Those dollar amounts, we have forecasted them to increase in year 2 and year 3 of the current fiscal plan. But always happen to listen to our school divisions to see if there's additional supports that we need to provide. This is critical to the early development of students and to addressing, I mentioned earlier, some of the complexity challenges that we have. If we can identify challenges and issues that students may have early, of course, the downstream challenges are less. So it's important to make these investments early on so that we can address that. And that's, I think, specifically why groups like Dyslexia Canada have come out strongly in support of this legislation because they recognize that it can help to identify students with dyslexia or other challenges, and we can provide them the support that they need early on and help reduce further impacts in later years.
Anyone else? Once, twice, sold. Thank you very much, everyone,
Thank you
for
so
joining
much.
us today, and have a good rest of your day. You know how to get a hold of me. Thank you very much.